The first sound was not the cry, but the wind, a slow breath rolling over the savannah, stirring the tall reeds and whispering through the cracks of the thirsty earth. Dawn spilled over the African floodplain in strokes of gold and silver, painting the surface of the shrinking river like liquid glass. Birds rose from the reeds in bursts of wings, their shadows sliding across the muddy water. The world was waking, calm, peaceful, alive at the river's edge. A herd of elephants stood half immersed in the shallows, their massive forms glowing under the newborn sun. Steam curled off their wet backs. A young calf splashed between its mother's legs, chasing reflections on the surface. Across the same pool, not far from where the elephants bathed, a pod of hippos dozed in the warmth, their rounded backs like smooth stones breaking through the surface. The air carried the heavy smell of mud, grass, and life itself. For a moment, this corner of the wild seemed endless and safe, a shared home for giants. Among the hippos, a tiny calf, barely 3 weeks old, was testing its courage. Its mother watched closely, eyes half above water, but didn't move. The calf had just discovered that the river wasn't all the same. There were shallows, currents, and stretches of soft mud that hugged its belly when it tried to walk. It squealed softly, delighted by the strange feeling, and lifted its nose high above the surface. A fish darted past. Somewhere nearby, a heron's cry echoed. Cutting through the still air, the elephants moved with slow grace, unaware that their world and the hippos were about to collide in ways none of them could imagine. The matriarch, an old female named Sona, stood tall and silent at the center of her herd. Her skin carried the dust of countless journeys, her eyes deep and knowing. She had lived through many dry seasons. She could read the land the way others read the sky. As she watched the receding waterline, she felt something she could not name, a tension beneath the earth, a quiet warning that by mid-morning, the calm began to thin. The light sharpened, the air grew hotter. Cicadas screamed from the grasses. What had been soft mud at sunrise was now cracking, hardening into brittle earth. The river's edge glistened with the ghost of what had once been water. It was here, among those false puddles, that the hippo calf wandered, following a dragonfly that glittered like blue fire in the air. Its mother grunted softly, calling it back. The calf turned, hesitated, then stepped onto a patch of ground that looked firm enough to hold its weight. But the land was not what it seemed. Beneath the crust lay hollow space, a forgotten pocket of dried mud, once part of an old watering hole long drained by the sun. The calf's tiny foot pressed down. There was a faint crunch. Then the ground gave way. The sound that followed was short and dull, a heavy thud, a small gasp, and then silence. The mother froze, her ears twitching. A heartbeat later came the cry, thin, echoing, desperate. The baby was gone. The mother lunged forward, bellowing. Mud exploded around her feet as she stomped and pawed at the spot where her child had vanished. The ground trembled, but the hole only widened. Dust and dirt fell inward. The calf's cries rose again, muffled now, bouncing off the dry walls of the pit. It was trapped, far below the surface. In darkness, the river plain fell strangely quiet. Even the birds stopped calling. From across the field, Sona lifted her head. Her ears spread wide as she listened. The cry reached her, faint, trembling, full of fear. She turned toward the sound. The other elephants noticed her stillness, then followed her gaze. The matriarch took a slow step forward. She knew that sound. It was the cry of a young one. Not an elephant calf, but it didn't matter. To a mother, all cries of fear sound the same. The hippo pod gathered near the hole, anxious and confused. The mother's deep roars rolled across the plain, carrying both anger and heartbreak. She tried to dig, using her mouth to pull at the collapsing edges, but every move sent more dirt sliding into the hole. She could hear her baby below, choking, struggling, but couldn't reach. Panic turned to helplessness. She backed away, chest heaving, as if pleading for help from the empty horizon. From that horizon came an answer, not in words, but in footsteps. The ground began to tremble again, this time not from collapse, but from movement. One by one, the elephants approached, their silhouettes forming against the haze. Sona led them, her trunk swinging low, her eyes fixed on the spot where the cries came from. The hippos stirred uneasily. Elephants were massive, unpredictable neighbors. Yet something in Sona's calm, deliberate pace made even the anxious hippo mother pause. The elephant stopped a few feet from the hole. Dust hung in the air between the two species. Tension and hope mingled. Sona extended her trunk, sniffing the dry air, then lowered it toward the pit. She could smell the calf, frightened, exhausted, still alive. The matriarch rumbled softly, a sound deep and gentle, almost like a lullaby. The hippo mother stilled, eyes wide. Down below, the calf whimpered, covered in dust, its body pressed against the narrow wall. Tiny rocks crumbled beside it, falling onto its back. It called again, weaker this time. Above, the elephant's shadows moved across the mouth of the pit, blotting out the sun for a moment. The calf didn't know what they were, only that something larger was listening. For a long minute, no one moved. The wind hissed through the reeds, and the plains held their breath. Then Sona raised her head high and let out a deep, rolling trumpet that carried across the land, a signal to her herd. Around her, younger elephants shifted, their trunks twitching. She had decided. The matriarch took one last look at the hole, then back at the desperate hippo mother beside it. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. One had lost her child to darkness. The other had spent a lifetime protecting hers from it. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, long shadows stretched across the floodplain. Somewhere beneath that fading light, hope still stirred, trapped, crying, waiting to be found. And in the distance, the first elephant began to move, its massive foot pressing into the dry earth, as if answering a call that only mothers could hear. The world of the river plains was quiet again, but this time, the silence was not peace. It was the calm before something greater, an act of compassion that would soon echo far beyond the sound of any cry. The air shimmered with heat. Every breath tasted of dust. The cries of the trapped hippo calf had grown thin, no longer sharp and desperate, but hoarse, fading, like the voice of a creature slipping deeper into the earth itself. Above, the African sun hung white and merciless, burning everything beneath it. Around the pit, the mother hippo stumbled through exhaustion, her massive frame circling in tight, panicked loops. Each time she tried to dig with her snout, the fragile ground caved in, sending small avalanches of clay down into the hole. Her bellows echoed across the plains, a sound no animal ignored. It was grief, raw and helpless. Across the cracked expanse, the elephants had stopped moving. Their trunks hung still, their ears twitching in the heavy air. Dust clung to their skin, painting them the color of the earth itself. At the front stood Sona, the matriarch, her eyes half in shadow. She had heard those cries before, not this calf's voice, but others like it, long ago. She knew what kind of death waited inside that hole. The land was changing, drying faster each year, and humans had once carved these pits to catch the rains. Now, they caught only the innocent. The wind shifted, carrying the calves' cries toward the herd. Sona's head rose, and she rumbled, a low, commanding sound that rippled through the elephants behind her. The younger ones froze, waiting. Slowly, she began to walk. Her massive feet pressed into the cracked soil, stirring small clouds of dust. The others followed, silent except for the creak of their skin and the steady thud of their steps. The hippos stirred as the elephants drew near. Their instincts screamed caution. Elephants were enormous and unpredictable, but the matriarch's movements were calm, deliberate. She didn't approach with the arrogance of a rival. Her trunk swung low, her pace unhurried, her rumble deep and soothing. The hippo mother, panting and covered in mud, turned to face her, nostrils flaring, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Then came a sound no one expected, not a trumpet of warning, but a soft, vibrating note that trembled through the ground. It wasn't a threat. It was reassurance. Sona reached the edge of the pit and paused. The ground was brittle, split like old pottery. She extended her trunk, brushing loose soil aside until she could see the shadowed opening. The smell of damp clay and trapped life rose up. Beneath it, she heard a faint, trembling breath. The calf was still alive. The matriarch let out a low, resonant call. It rolled across the plain like distant thunder, not loud, but deep enough to stir something in every creature who heard it. The other elephants stepped closer. They understood. The first touch of her trunk sent a shiver through the hole, loosening more dust. The hippo mother roared, stepping forward, but stopped when Sona looked at her, one steady gaze that seemed to say, "Trust me." Then, slowly, the work began. The elephants formed a semicircle around the pit, their trunks and feet moving in rhythm. They dug carefully, each scoop of earth deliberate and slow. Dust rose in swirling clouds, coating their faces and filling the air with the dry scent of clay. Their shadows flickered like ghosts against the bright sun. Sona moved first, breaking up the hardest soil, while two younger females cleared the loosened dirt away. Time stretched. Minutes felt like hours. Sweat darkened the hippo mother's thick skin as she stood nearby, trembling. The hole widened, but the edges kept crumbling inward. Every mistake threatened to bury the calf deeper. Once, a young bull stepped too close, and a whole section of the wall gave way. The earth collapsed with a sickening rumble. Silence. The calves' cries stopped. For a long moment, no one moved. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The hippo mother dropped her head and let out a moan, a sound of despair that rippled through the plain. The younger elephants backed away, fearful. Sona stayed still, her trunk suspended in the air. She waited, listening. The dust began to settle, drifting down like ash. Then, faintly, a small, weak whimper. The calf was still there. Sona exhaled, long and low, the sound vibrating through her massive body. She stepped forward again, her eyes dark with determination. Slowly, she lowered her trunk into the opening, deeper this time, until it brushed something soft and warm. The calf's slick skin was coated in mud, trembling under her touch. It was alive, barely, but alive. The matriarch let out another call, this one deeper, rolling through the ground like a drumbeat. The herd responded. Every elephant moved in unison now. They dug with renewed purpose, slower but stronger, clearing the space without letting it collapse again. Dust turned the air golden. The sun shifted westward, but they did not stop. The hours dragged on, and exhaustion crept into every movement. The matriarch's sides rose and fell heavily. Her tusks were streaked with mud, yet she pressed on. Around her, the younger elephants mirrored her patience, learning in silence what compassion looked like in the language of giants. Finally, a small patch of movement caught the light. A slick, mud-covered nose broke through the surface. The sound that followed, a high-pitched, gasping squeal, cracked the silence open like lightning. The calf was there, blinking, caked in earth, but breathing. The elephants froze, then leaned forward as one. Sona slid her trunk under the tiny body and, with a strength both gentle and immense, lifted the calf free. The creature dangled for a moment, dripping mud. Before she laid it down carefully on the sunlit ground, the hippo mother charged forward, grunting low in disbelief, her massive head nudging her baby again and again. The calf blinked, coughed, and let out a weak cry. Its small legs kicked feebly, finding the warmth of its mother's side. The mother lowered herself beside it, her body trembling from relief and exhaustion. Around them, the elephants stood in silence. Dust floated through the air like smoke after a battle. The heat of the day had begun to fade, and the wind carried a faint smell of rain, still distant, but coming. Sona watched the pair for a long moment, then lifted her trunk high. The sound that came from her was not loud, not triumphant, but soft, a call that spoke of peace. The hippo mother answered with a low grunt, a simple acknowledgement of what had just passed between them. For a moment, two species that rarely shared space stood side by side, connected not by blood or territory, but by something far deeper, the shared instinct to protect life. As the sun sank toward the horizon, the river plain glowed with a red, trembling light. The elephants began to move away, slow and quiet, their silhouettes long and graceful against the burning sky. Behind them, the rescued calf nestled against its mother, safe once more. The world, for now, was still. And in that stillness, the earth itself seemed to breathe again, heavy with dust, yet alive with something the drought could never take: hope. The sun hung low over the savannah, spreading its fading light across the land like a soft golden blanket. Long shadows stretched over the broken earth where the battle for life had taken place. The air still smelled of clay and sweat, and the faint sweetness of wet mud. At the center of it all lay the little hippo calf, weak, shivering, but breathing. Each rise and fall of its chest felt like a quiet miracle. Its mother stood beside it, her great body coated in a crust of dried mud and fear, her wide nostrils flaring as if counting every breath her baby took. A few paces away, the elephant herd rested in a loose circle. The giants that had moved the earth itself now stood silent, their trunks draped across each other's shoulders like tired friends. Their eyes, rimmed with dust, glowed softly in the last light. The matriarch, Sona, stood apart, watching the horizon. Her wrinkled ears flicked at the hum of insects, her gaze steady and calm. In the far distance, she saw a faint shimmer, the reflection of water. The first sign of rain-fed pools returning to the dry plain. The silence that followed the struggle felt sacred. Even the wind seemed to pause. Only the slow dripping of mud from the elephant's tusks broke the quiet, each drop falling like the closing notes of a song. The hippo mother lowered her head, nudging her calf. The little one stirred, blinking weakly. Its small eyes, rimmed with grit, lifted toward her. And in that gaze was everything: pain, exhaustion, and the fragile thread of hope. As twilight deepened, the colors of the savannah began to change. The golden light softened into deep amber, then purple. The dust in the air glowed like embers. The herd stood motionless, their massive forms silhouetted against the glowing sky. For hours, they had fought for a life that was not their own. And now, as the day gave way to night, they seemed to understand the weight of what had happened. Sona stepped forward. Her trunk brushed lightly against the hippo mother's flank, a gesture so gentle it seemed impossible for such strength. The hippo did not move away this time. She only blinked, her breathing slow and heavy. Between them, the calf gave a weak grunt, shifting its small legs beneath its muddy belly. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the calf tried to stand. Its legs trembled, sliding on the wet earth. It slipped once, twice, then steadied itself. Its body swayed, every muscle shaking with the effort. The mother pressed her nose to its side, steadying it. A low murmur rose from the herd, a deep, vibrating rumble that rippled through the ground. It wasn't speech, but something older, the language of reassurance. The calf took one step, then another. Its small hooves sank into the soft clay, leaving prints beside the deep, round ones of the elephants. The herd watched, motionless, as the pair began to move, slowly, painfully, toward the shimmer of water in the distance. Sona turned her head to the others and rumbled softly. Without hesitation, the herd followed, not to claim the water, but to stand beside those who had once been strangers. The dry wind swept across them, carrying the smell of dust, rain, and something unspoken. Unity to be why the time they reached the riverbed, dusk had melted into night. The moon was rising, white and perfect above the plains. The river was shallow, but it moved, a silver thread winding through cracked earth. The hippo calf paused at the edge, unsure. Then, with a soft splash, it stepped in. The cool touch of water made it gasp, then grunt in relief. Its mother followed, sinking her heavy body beside it. Together they moved deeper, until the mud on their skin began to wash away. Sona stood on the bank, her great frame outlined by moonlight. Her trunk lifted high, a single note rising into the night, low and rumbling, like thunder far away. It was a farewell, but also a blessing. The sound rolled across the water and faded into the dark, where it would echo for miles. The hippo mother turned back once. Their eyes met. Ancient beings who understood the same truth. In the wild, life doesn't survive alone. Then she turned again, guiding her calf farther into the shallows. Where reeds swayed and frogs croaked softly, the elephants lingered for a while, watching the ripples spread across the surface, circles widening, fading, disappearing. Finally, Sona turned and began to walk. The herd followed silently. Their steps fell heavy but calm, each one sinking deep into the soft mud beside the smaller prints of the hippos. Two paths intertwined. For a moment, before parting again, as they moved away, the plain began to change. The faint scent of rain grew stronger. A cool breeze rolled in from the horizon, carrying with it the promise of storms. Lightning flickered far off in the clouds, brief flashes illuminating the herd's silhouettes as they vanished into the tall grass. The camera would pull back now, rising high above the savannah. The land below was vast and wounded, but alive. The broken well that had once trapped the hippo calf was now just a hollow scar. Surrounded by tracks of rescue and struggle, the footprints of elephants and hippos side by side, pressed into the same earth that I in the distance. The river caught the last light of dusk, a thread of silver against the dark. The narrator's voice would come quietly, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. In a land where survival is a daily test, kindness is the rarest strength of all. The camera would linger on the water one last time. The hippo calf lifted its small head, eyes reflecting the stars. Beside it, its mother's bulk moved slowly, protectively. The gentle waves they made spread outward, tiny circles fading into stillness. Then the frame would widen even more, showing the vastness of the wild, stretching beyond sight. Grass bending in the wind, trees standing patient against the coming storm. Somewhere in that silence, Sona's call still echoed faintly, a sound that seemed to live inside the earth itself. And as the herd disappeared into the deepening night, their shadows merging with the land, the story would end not in victory or loss, but in peace. The calf lived. The herd moved on, and the savannah, for one quiet evening, remembered what it meant to be whole. The wild is fierce, the silence seemed to say, but even here, compassion endures.